Welcome to Elevate Your Mind, your number one podcast for peak performance strategies that will enhance your mindset, develop your emotional skill set, and maybe, just maybe, be the catalyst to create positive forward momentum in your life. Here's what's to come from today's pod.
The emotional chain reaction. A thought leads to a feeling, which then leads to an emotion, which serves the purpose to meet the deeper emotional need. And like I've said to you all many times over on this podcast or on different platforms, how you may follow me, you don't have emotions. You use and you do emotions, and you use and you do them to meet deeper emotional needs. Boom, we are live, guys. Welcome back to another Elevate Your Mind. Very much looking forward to getting stuck into this one with you. A real good deep dive today. A real good understanding of the emotional ways in which you operate. Because, like I always say, consciously, you can understand your anxiety, your fear, your worry, your doubt, your stress, your overwhelm, whatever limiting trait is holding you back. You can understand it to the nth degree. Does not equal emotional breakthroughs. To create emotional breakthroughs, number one, we must do. That is the fundamental thing. That is what creates emotion within us. What is emotion? Emotion, energy in motion, emotion. So first and foremost, write that one down because that is the fundamental factor. But the second part of that is we have to understand what we emotionally, how we emotionally, I beg your pardon, operate. Because that is what's going to change the game for us. And today is all around understanding what is the purpose of your anxiety or fear or worry or doubt or stress or overwhelm. What is the purpose of it? Because when you understand the purpose of it, you understand the chokehold of what is driving you to do what you do on a regular basis. When you understand the purpose of something, you can make peace with it. Why? Because you understand them. You know, let's say, for example, you're getting into an argument with your partner and you say, why on earth would you do that? Why would you do that? And you feel yourself getting really angry, really irate, really frustrated with them. Why would you do that? And they say, honey, I'm really sorry. I just did that because I thought that was going to really help you out. And I thought that by me doing that, it could have taken some things off your mind. And you go, well, I get it. Yes, thank you. But I wish you wouldn't have done it that way. But look what happens there straight away. You understand the purpose. So the emotion, the trait of anger, frustration, worry, doubt, stress over that situation, it dissipates. And so if I can show you what is the purpose of your anxiety or your fear or your worry or your doubt. But I've used in this title of anxiety because it's where I mainly specialise at this point and where I help so many people, is the fact that if you can understand the purpose of that, you're in a place where you can absolutely take control of it. Sound good? Sounds good to me. So let's get cracking here. You see, the way that we all work is what I call the emotional chain reaction. The emotional chain reaction. And what the emotional chain reaction is this. A person in life, a person creates a thought. Now, I've said this before, you have somewhere in the region of 60,000 thoughts every single day. So, you create thoughts. You create a thought which cultivates a feeling, and that feeling then you spark and you use an emotion that serves a purpose to meet a deeper emotional need. Now, this is the 5-step process basically. The emotional chain reaction. A thought leads to a feeling, which then leads to an emotion, which serves the purpose to meet the deeper emotional need. And like I've said to you all many times over on this podcast or on different platforms, how you may follow me, you don't have emotions. You use and you do emotions, and you use and you do them to meet deeper emotional needs. But like the example I gave at the very start of this particular episode here, once you understand the purpose, you understand the chokehold of the rest of it. Because the thought that pops in your mind ignites the feeling within you to simply use the emotion to serve that purpose. And so if you can see that in terms of thought, feeling, emotion to serve the purpose, if you put that in rewind, if I can understand the purpose, well, it negates the emotion, which then doesn't create the feeling within me, which then that thought I don't even take notice of. People all the time saying to me, oh Matt, I have these thoughts and this and that, and overwhelming thoughts and intrusive thoughts and overthinking. I'm like, cool. And what does that happen? Oh, when I do this, then all of a sudden I start obsessing over this feeling in my body. Oh, so it's created a feeling. And then what do you do? I get really anxious. Okay, so you're using that emotion of anxiety. Cool. And why are you doing that? Oh, but then once I use that emotion of anxiety, or then what happens is I go and seek reassurance from my partner, or I take myself to my safe space. I'm like, there's the purpose. There's the purpose. The purpose is you crave that reassurance, what I spoke to you about in the last episode of this particular podcast. You crave that reassurance, you crave that control, you crave that safety, you crave that love. That's what we crave underneath. That's what the deeper emotional need is. And the way that you do that is the purpose is to use the anxiety that is ignited from that feeling, that is created from obsessing over that thought. So now you see why you have that thought over and over and over and over again. Because this is the emotional chain reaction. I know some of you are sitting behind your screens now, listening on your earpods going, bloody hell, I've never explained this before. I told you. Well, I say I told you. Someone said this to me. Matt, you're the guy that people go to when they've tried everything else. I was like, you know what? That's the best way I've heard it. It is exactly what I am. Once people tried their CBTs and their counsellings and their hypnotherapies and their medications and their meditations, they come and see me, because ultimately these things just help them cope and manage, and I help you take control and overcome this. This is exactly what I'm explaining to you here. Once you identify the purpose, which I'm going to share with you here, by the way, so don't worry. Once you identify the purpose, you can identify why you're doing what you're doing. If you want to stay focused on ruminating on certain thoughts all the time, then well, you're going to be in struggle street, because it's like you're scratching the surface of these things. You're barely coping. Not going to work. This is why when you hear, see that thought floating down a river on a leaf or on a cloud moving by, it's like, leave off. Respectfully, like they're nice little, what's the word I'm looking for? Anecdotes to what I'm doing here, but as a foundational thing, no chance. Because you see, let me ask you this. What limiting trait are you currently struggling with? What is it? Fear, worry, doubt, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, depression, sadness, low mood? What is it? What limiting trait is it? Now let me ask you this. This limiting trait, which is the emotion, so step 3 in this process. This limiting trait, this limiting emotion, when you feel this type of way, what do you generally do? Or what do you do to try and move past it? Because you see, identifying the purpose of these things is a lot simpler than what you think. That's why I'm giving you some real coaching here. It's a lot simpler than what you think. So when you feel anxious, as an example, so that's the name of this one in this title, what do you do? Do you go and seek reassurance from your partner or your friend or your mum or your dad? Do you take yourself away to a safe space to try and calm yourself down and make yourself feel okay? Do you give yourself, time to yourself where no one can distract you and you can just be on your own for a while because you live such a busy and hectic life? Do you do all the above? Because ultimately you are using that emotion to get that. Whatever you just said there, whatever you just thought just there, that is why you are constantly using anxiety, to get that reassurance, to get that love, to get that time on your own. I work with like new parents. I always go to say single parents, but that's obviously not what I'm saying. Newborn parents, you know what I'm trying to say. Newborn parents. Well, anyway, you know what I'm saying here. So you see, I work with parents all the time, and they're so busy being a mum or dad, being a husband or wife, being a friend, being a worker still, or, you know, having to deal with this, all the life changes that happen with being a new parent, that they get so anxious, because then it gives them time to themselves. Because when they're anxious, they're not focusing on anything else, they're just focusing on themselves. So they end up using anxiety. And then they come to me and they'll say, oh Matt, I can't stop thinking about what's going to happen with my health, what's going to happen this. Oh, interesting. Health anxiety, quote unquote. Of course it's quote unquote, because once you understand the deeper need, it doesn't matter if it's health, driving, social or anything like that. I know why you're doing what you're doing, because you're having that ruminating thought on, oh, my heartbeat, or what's that feeling, because then that creates the feeling that then allows me to use the emotion to serve that purpose of giving me time to myself to feel a deeper emotional need, which I go into in depth with my clients and show them how to feel in empowering ways. Can't always do that on a podcast like this, but once you have this framework of understanding of how you tick emotionally, you can go and apply this in your life. So let me come back to it. What was the answer that you just gave? When you feel anxious or worry or fretful or doubtful or stressed or overwhelmed or depressed, what do you do? What do you do? Do you isolate yourself and give yourself time for just you? What is it? Interesting. Because you see, that right there is the purpose of why you are using that emotion. You go, no, Matt, I can't be. Yes, Matt, it is. It is. Absolutely 100%. I know you've never heard it mentioned like this before, but like I said to you before, if you just want to learn to cope and manage, then be my guest. I'm here to help you take control and overcome this, because once you can identify this and identify exactly why you're doing what you're doing, what we can then do is look to meet that need in more empowering ways. So you know what? That need where I'm using this trait of anxiousness because it gives me the purpose of creating time on my own for myself, and it's a time where I can do that and I've got a reason to do that. Well, you know what? What's a more empowering way where I can regularly give myself time as a new parent, as a friend, as a mum, as a dad, as a brother, as a sister, as all these different roles that I play in my life? I still want to have time for me. So what's a way that I can go and create that in my life in an empowering way? Because guess what? When you meet that need in an empowering way, you doesn't have the purpose anymore, so therefore you don't need to use that emotion, so therefore you won't obsess over that feeling, so therefore you won't keep ruminating on that thought. And that reverse chain reaction process, you cut to pieces. You'll create a new emotional chain. You'll focus on thinking about so much, oh, I can't wait to go and play golf later. I can't wait to go for my afternoon walk later. And that feeling will create some excitement, and that emotion will create some drive within you. Why? Because that drive is going to serve the purpose that I know that it's going to meet the deeper emotion need of me giving time to myself in an empowering way. I don't have to use these emotions. You are not a slave to these emotions, but you must understand why we do what we do. It's what I'm obsessed with. I'm obsessed with why we do what we do. Obsessed with it. Human behaviour, human emotion. It's why you've got all these platforms from me and why I'm so passionate about this. Everyone's got their thing. This is my thing. I'm obsessed with it. Probably because of things that have happened in my life, and I could never understand why things were done in certain ways. It's made me a student of emotion. It's made me a student of human behaviour. Studied it earnestly, researched it to the nth degree. Qualifications, certifications, you name it. And this is the framework of what I want to explain to you here. You don't have any of these emotions by chance. None of them show up just for the sake of it. They show up to serve a purpose. What's the purpose for you? But this requires some radical transparency as well. If you're not going to be transparent with yourself, well, what's the point? What's the point? If every time I get anxious, I know that my partner's always going to be there for me, but I'm not willing to admit that no, then you don't want to change it enough. Why? Because you know that if I'm anxious, then my partner's always going to be there. So, no, it's just fine because my partner's always there. So you might say to me, no, but Matt, I really want to overcome anxiety. Actions speak louder than words. Because if you really did, you'd be invested in understanding that, you know what, I can still have that reassurance from my partner, but I can meet it in a better, more profound way. That's why I say, when people work with me, I don't work with everyone who I speak to, and I have initial conversations, completely free consultations with people, and I don't work with everyone for the very simple reason that there's two things that are needed, only two things that are needed to create success for people who work with me. That is a commitment to themselves, not to me, just to themselves, and a slightly open mind. That's it. That's it. But if you're someone who, oh no, Matt, I'll tell you that I want to overcome it, but I don't really, then you're not committed. And oh no, Matt, that can't be the case. And don't get me wrong, you need an understanding, you need the proof, you need all these things, fine. But if you just got completely closed off, then there's no point. Now, I'm not saying in this context about you working with me, but you working with yourself. If you don't have a commitment to yourself and you don't have an open mind with yourself, what's the point? We need to be radically transparent with ourselves to understand that, you know what, every time I use this trait, I get that need met. I spoke about this with babies. Babies know, babies are the greatest teachers. They know that when they fart and kick and scream and punch, it serves the purpose that they're going to get the attention that they want. So they keep doing it. Adults are just big kids emotionally. I said that in the last episode. Here we are again. Now you're just having a deeper framework-based understanding here so you can understand it for yourself. Because this isn't going to be the longest episode for you here. It's a short, sharp, succinct, precise message for you to understand. What is the limiting emotion? What purpose does it fulfill? And the purpose it fulfills is the way that you generally feel better about yourself. How do you generally feel better about yourself when you're dealing with that limiting emotion? I breathe and I give time to myself and I take my time. Okay, cool. So you want some love, care and attention. Cool. I want that too. But I can get that from being anxious, or I can get that from meeting that need in more empowering ways. Because once you identify that, you can just go, right, you know what, there's so many better ways for me to do this. Let me create some time for myself. Let me spend time with my partner. Let me schedule some time in where we do X, Y, Z, whatever it may be. That's your call. And as I said at the start of this very episode, this has been a deeper emotional understanding. Short, but precise. It's been a deeper emotional understanding. But any emotional understanding is compounded, if you want results, with action. Action. That's the key thing here. I've give you an insight into the emotional ways. I understand that there's some implementation side of things that you might want help with. Cool, that's why I'm here. But ultimately, you need to now go and action that. Really write it down. Write down. Listen to this again. It's only a short episode. That thought that I have where I ruminate on, oh God, am I going to feel worried? Am I going to feel worried if I do that? Oh my God, what's that feeling? And then I obsess over that feeling. That creates that anxiousness. Then I go to my partner and they reassure me and then I feel better. Interesting. Write that down. Step 1, thought. What's the thought? Step 2, feeling. What's the feeling? Step 3, what's the emotion that I'm using? Step 4, what's the purpose? Okay. Because then, if that's the case, well, you know what? Let me work back up the chain then and go, well, if I change the way that I'm getting reassurance from my partner, I can use a different emotion, do this, meet it in an empowering way. Because like I said with the golf and like I said with the going for the walk in the afternoon, if I'm giving time to myself and reassuring myself, well, I can be excited about that because I'm going to be doing it in a more of an empowering way, going to golf or going for that walk on my own. That creates some excitement, so that feeling is a little bit more energetic within me. So the thought that I'm having is I can't wait until 4 p.m. until I can do that. I'm now starting to entertain different thoughts. Because of those 60,000, they're all available, all those thoughts. It's simply a case of what's the purpose of the ones that you're going to focus in on. Got it? Got it. Short, sharp, succinct, precise, to the jugular. Let's do something about it. Don't make this a nice listening, go and action it. I'm all about action takers. If you're an action taker, we're in the same team, we're in the same corner. Let's go do this thing. It is an absolute pleasure serving you in this way. I'll look forward to seeing and serving you again very, very soon. It is time to elevate your mind. Take care.